in the traffic thing with the Netflix. Yeah, there's like a Netflix thing happening. Big tech extracting its revenge on us once again. I'm really excited to be here with you today. I have to put in a shameless plug because I just confirmed that I'm going to be back in September playing guitar with my friend's band. So if any of you want to go to Mazo, is that a place where bands play? I think that's where Mazzo. Yeah. So cool. I hope to see some of you there. I will be back there on September 17th. I need to find an office to work out of for the afternoon. So if anyone has an office they can offer me, please speak to me after my talk. When I'm not playing guitar, I'm working with companies, talking to folks like yourselves. I've worked with some big companies, some small companies. I'm coming up on 15 years in product. I've written a couple of books. Every time I give this talk, the Agile book winds up farther in the back because I don't really ever want to talk about Agile ever again. But I am here touring my new book, Impact First Product Teams. There are some copies of it over there that we'll give away to folks who ask questions and to anyone else who wants to put business impact at the heart of their work and who doesn't. This is the version of the talk where I get right to the main points because I'm standing in between you and pizza. This is the sopa castellana that I had for lunch today. It was really good. I had sopa castellana the last time I was in Madrid, and it is not all the reason I came back, but it's some of the reason I came back. So the main reason I wrote this book and I'm doing this talk is that we have hit a point in product development where we can no longer avoid this truth, right? Your team is there for a reason. The business expects something from you. And if you're working at a startup, that might be finding product market fit. If you're working at a corporate, that might be cutting costs or driving profits. If you're working at a Series A or Series B, it might be bringing in growth or increasing top-line revenue. There is some existential reason why your team is there, and if you don't know what that reason is, then you are in really, really big trouble. Now, in theory, we should all, of course, we all know that, but I've worked in this industry for 15 years, and a lot of us don't really know it. And I think we're seeing that in the market over the last 5 or so years, right? There have been a lot of layoffs. I think 5-10 years ago, I felt kind of invincible. I was like, I made it. I'm a product manager. I have senior product roles on my resume. Nothing bad can ever happen to me. And then bad things happened to me and a lot of people who I know. If you look at this Spotify layoff, this one was particularly interesting to me, not just because it affected some close friends of mine, but because of this quote, where the CEO of Spotify said, "We still have too many people dedicated to supporting work and even doing work around the work rather than contributing to opportunities with real impact." Now, I had some complicated feelings about this statement because ostensibly it is the leadership team, like the CEO, who are hiring these people and telling them what to do. So there's a little bit of yeah, we hired you and told you to do supporting work, and then you went and did supporting work, so now you're fired, which doesn't seem exactly just to me. But again, we are not in a world of absolute justice, right? We're in a world where, for better or worse, product teams will ultimately bear the consequences of the impact or lack of impact of their work, even if they're doing exactly the work they were told to do. I want to take a moment and just really stress that point. For you as people working on product teams, you will bear the consequences of your team's impact. Even if you do exactly what you're told. Even if you're told, go build this feature and the feature fails. Even if you're told, oh, we have this 87-point strategy and you're on one of the points of the strategy. It doesn't matter. If you can't speak directly to the impact your team is having, you are in a very tenuous position as a person on a product team. So in theory, most of product stuff is designed to get us from here to here, right? So we have objectives, initiatives, strategy, bets, discovery. Most of the writing about product management kind of lives in the middle here, right? It's about how you take these lofty goals and you break it down into objectives, initiatives, strategy, bets, discovery, follow the breadcrumb trail back from your day-to-day work, and before you know it, you're in high-impact product team. The reality is that all this stuff is super messy. I've never worked with a company that does this perfectly, right? Having been in the room where these things are decided, I worked with one company that was oh, our bets and our objectives are misaligned with each other. What do we do? So they added initiatives. So now they had 3 misaligned things because it's a lot easier when you're an executive to add things than to subtract things. So this is always going to be a mess, right? But in a sense, that gives us freedom, because it means we don't have to stress ourselves out that our companies are not doing strategy perfectly, that our companies don't have perfect bets and initiatives. It means that we, as members of a product team, can do the work of drawing a direct line between the work we're doing and the impact of that work. And that's why I wrote this book. That's what this whole book is about. Now, to make things a little bit more complicated, most organizations, including the big fancy famous tech companies that you read white papers from, are actually set up to perpetuate low impact work. Most product organizations are set up to deliver low impact work, not impactful work. And I can share a little fun thought experiment to illustrate at a high level why this is. So imagine, does anyone here work in automotive? Do we have any car people here? No? One? Okay, cool. So this will resonate with you more than it resonates with me, because I don't know anything about cars, including how to drive them. So imagine I'm from New York City. We don't do that. Imagine we're all working for a car company, right? And I'm going to give you two options. Number one is we can put our hands in the engine and fine tune it so that the car runs really smoothly. Now, we might break the car. We might make it stop running entirely. Our hands are going to get dirty. But we might also make the car run much better for the people driving it. That's our first option. Our second option, I can give you a bag of rhinestones and a glue gun, and you can bedazzle the hell out of this car. Like, you can put decorations on it, you can make it say whatever you want, you can make this car sparkle. Now, like, car's going to run exactly how it did before, right? You're not touching the engine. If the car's broken, it's not your fault. Which one of these would you rather? I know which one I'd rather do. Like, give me the glue gun. I don't know how an engine works. I don't want to be the person who broke the car. Especially in more complex organizations, this kind of feels like the choice we're making sometimes. I worked with one company where they referred to the Eye of Sauron being cast on anybody who tries to touch the engine. Like, if you do something that touches the commercial heart of the company, all the executives come out of the woodwork and they suddenly appear and they're like, "Why are you doing that? What are you doing?" It's like, rhinestones, got my rhinestones and my glue gun. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Now, this can feel harmless, right? One of the reasons I think that teams tend to do this is that it's like, we didn't touch the engine, we didn't make it harder to make the car run, we just did stuff that doesn't matter, it doesn't hurt. Over time, it absolutely hurts. And just about every organization I've ever worked with finds itself in some stage of this pattern, which I call the low impact death spiral. This might look familiar to some of you as I walk through it, because again, your organization is probably here. So here's how it works. Product teams deliver low impact work, right? We don't want to touch the engine. We love our rhinestones. We love our glue gun. We say it's not going to do any harm. It's fine. That results in more complicated products. So if you use most modern products, they feel like collections of loosely coupled features more so than guided experiences, right? It's like, now we have, like, Facebook is the worst about this. You use Facebook, it's like marketplace and charities and messages and groups and organizations. I'm like, what are you doing? Now, as our complex products become more complicated, there's more and more dependencies and conflicts to manage, right? It's actually harder and harder to do high impact work, because suddenly, if we want to make a change to the Facebook homepage, we have to talk to the marketplace team, and we have to talk to the messenger team, and we have to talk to the charities team. In other words, we've put so many rhinestones on the car that we can't lift the hood of the car anymore. And what does that mean? That means we're certainly not going to try to lift the hood if it's heavier, right? We're just going to keep doing more and more low impact work, and around and around and around it goes. Now, what's interesting to me is that most of the companies I work with as a consultant don't really understand that this is the problem. They just see this bit. They see the dependencies, and they're like, we have to do dependency management. This is unfortunately why I think a lot of organizations take a very superficial approach to product ops. They're like, oh, well, we just need a program management layer, right? There's so many meetings to manage dependencies. Let's reorg for better portfolio management. That will solve all of our problems. Or as the CEO of Spotify said, teams are doing work around the work. Why are there all these meetings and all this? There's all this sense of work being done, but there's not actual impact happening. It's not because of this, it's because of this. It's because of the low impact work being done. I worked with MailChimp for 3 years leading up to their acquisition by Intuit. If you go to check out at MailChimp, right, if you buy a plan, this button says buy now. It used to say add to cart. So it used to be when you purchased a MailChimp marketing plan, it would add that plan to a cart, and then you had to go through a second cart checkout experience. That's the engine of the car, right? That's the new user sign-up flow. Nobody wanted to touch this. Until their CPO, my friend Natalia Williams, basically said to the product team, like, we need to drive this specific percentage improvement in new user signups. We need to drive it by this date. And if we don't, like, we're really in trouble. Like, if we can't make this change, if we can't deliver this outcome for the business, the next conversation we have is going to be not as fun a conversation. Because I need to see that the team can really deliver impact. One of the product managers I worked with on this team, she went and got some user research done to find out where people were getting stuck. She found this as the biggest pain point for people. She ran the data and found out that people were abandoning their carts because it's just an extra step and it's confusing. She ran the data and found that there were like literally 5 users out of millions of users who were actually checking out with multiple things in their cart. So she gathered all the product managers together and she said, I found the problem. Who wants to fix it? And every single product manager in the room looked her in the eye and said, not me. I don't want to do this. Why would I do this? Why would I do this? The CFO is going to yell at me. The CPO, everyone's going to yell at me. And she said, I kid you not, she actually said, I will haunt all of you in your dreams until this is fixed. That's good product management right there. They did it. They made the change. It delivered the impact. I like this story because it's not like they used the magical best practice and everything worked out. It was conversation. It was communication. It was honesty. It was people being really clear, like, yeah, this is going to be hard, but this is the most important thing for us to do. And if we can't do it, we are not delivering the value that is expected from us as a product team. So this is my favorite one. This is the last one that we're going to go deep on. Most product teams have too many goals to drive real impact, and they're usually the wrong goals. How many people here are using like OKRs? How many people have more than 2 OKRs? You probably have too many OKRs. So I was working with a team a while ago that was tasked with building a new version of their ad tech platform. This was an ad tech company within a larger company. And they said, we need your help. We need help prioritizing features. Help us build an ICE matrix and prioritize features for our new ad tech platform relaunch. And I asked them, as I often ask them, like, okay, let's open this conversation. What goals are you working towards? How do we measure the success of your new ad tech platform? And they said, I'm so glad you asked. Here is our slide deck. It has the 52 initiatives at the company and our OKRs corresponding to each of the 52 initiatives. I was like, cool. That seems like a lot. Are there any? They're like, oh, no, sorry. We also have a Miro board that has our other goals in it. I like Miro boards that are unbounded, that just grow forever, that are the size of 5 football fields. Don't do it. Just don't do it. But apparently this team had run out of space in their Miro board because it turned out they had 2 Miro boards. So they had 1 slide deck and 2 Miro boards with their goals. So I did what I do as a consultant and trainer. I had a workshop. I love this photo because I looked at it and I was like, oh, I look so serious and smart. And then there's this guy over here who's just like, nope. Not buying it. So we did a workshop to try to get them down to 1 goal. We were like, why does this team exist? Why are you rebuilding this ad tech platform? What is the CEO of this company literally going to be looking at to say, did this team deliver the impact we expect from them or not? And we came up with 2 different options. One was build an excellent, amazing, stupendous platform to increase our team's profits by 20% in the next financial year. Fair enough. Another person on the team said, no, I think it's build a seamless, wonderful platform to increase our team's profits from £20 million to £100 million in the next financial year. These 2 things are different. One is 20%, one is 500%. So I asked the first team, I was like, how did you come up with 20%? And they were like, we don't know, sounded good. Like 20%. And I don't want to make fun of them because like it's really hard to name a number, right? Like it's really scary to put a number on paper. And I think if they hadn't done it, it wouldn't have compelled the conversation that got us to the other number. So we never blame anyone for saying the wrong number first. But sure enough, it turned out that there had been a town hall presentation where the VP of their team had said to the whole company, by the end of the next financial year, we expect that our new ad tech platform will be delivering $100 million in revenue. So this very ambitious goal was actually the one that had been presented to company leadership. People started to get a little nervous, a little sweaty. They're like, oh, that's bad. But you know what? It's the next financial year. That's like 10 years from now. We're fine. Like, we don't have to worry about it. We'll just do our best, and then hopefully, and I was like, okay, cool. Let's do one of my favorite exercises to do. Let's just put it on a board, right? Let's just like map it out. It's March of 2025. In March of 2026, we need 100 million pounds in revenue, 80 million pounds of it is new. What are some big milestones? Again, I'm not big on like frameworks and one size fits all stuff. I was like, what else should be on this timeline? Like, what are some other things we should just know about? And they were like, oh, well, we're launching the platform in October. Cool. So between March and October, if we don't launch a new platform, how much revenue will we make? Like, I don't know, like 10 million-ish pounds? Cool. So that means that in between October of 25 and March of 26, we need to make 90 million pounds of revenue. This was upsetting for them, but here's where this gets really interesting. Like, they looked at this and suddenly they started doing all the things that high-performing product teams are supposed to do. They were like, oh, we need to validate our assumptions, right? Like, we can't just wait until October and launch something. We have to ship things sooner. We have to look at monetizing some of our features earlier so we don't just do this one big launch. Can we get something out into the market earlier? Can we get more users in the funnel now? Suddenly, all those things that you're supposed to do, they were doing them because they had the pressure of a real-world impact level goal. A lot of the reasons that teams resist impact level goals, we'd have to work with other teams. It requires us to learn from the market. It's not in our control. That's exactly why they're good goals. Because it is outside of your control. If you want to make this money, you have to learn about your customers. You have to learn about what they care about. You have to test and validate. You can't just wait and hope for the best. So how does this happen? How do we have a team that goes through OKR season and pretends to care about their goals and creates a deck and 2 Miro boards every quarter, but completely loses sight of like why they exist? My answer to this comes from Christina Wadke's book, Radical Focus, which I think is one of the best product books ever written. She blurbed my book. You can find her blurb on the back. I'm very proud of that. And what she says in this book is basically like, the way most folks are taught to think about OKRs is to cascade them from company to department to team until you wind up with 2 Miro boards and a deck of goals that have nothing to do with what the company actually cares about. What she proposes is that every team, department, every goal should be no more than one step away from company goals. One mathematical operation, one why question. If the company goal is revenue, we can say, we're going to drive more users who create revenue, or we'll increase the revenue per user, or we'll just bring in this much revenue that contributes overall. If the company goal is growth, is to say like, look, we need to show that we have growth in the market. How many users specifically do we need to deliver in order to prove that we have found product market fit? Right? Product market fit is one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot. There's no like product market fit certification that can be like, you achieve PM. Like, you have to know what that means. If we stay one step away from company goals and if we keep these things really specific, it actually forces us to understand what the existential stakes are for our business and why our team is important to the business. So there's a bunch of examples of these kinds of goals in the book, but I have a little checklist that I share when you are setting team level goals. Number one, are our team level goals no more than one step away from company level goals? Can we get there in one step? If we can't, we're at a really big risk of doing stuff that doesn't matter. Number 2, do our team goals involve specific enough timelines and targets to drive subtractive decision making? In other words, when MailChimp was saying we need to drive this specific percentage increase in conversions by this date, that's what created the fire for people to put their hands in the engine, right? If we're not that specific, it's not going to happen. And finally, we'll come back to this. Do our team goals contribute to company level goals enough to justify the company's investment in the team itself? We are not inexpensive people as product people. If you want your own copy of this, I see some of you taking pictures. I actually have it available for download. All the resources from the book are available as a QR code. There's a link to buy the book. I think I still have the link to Amazon Australia in there from the last talk I gave in Australia. So apologies for that. It is also available on Amazon Spain. So this is tough stuff, right? I don't want to trivialize the emotional aspect of this, right? Because committing to goals outside of our control is scary. It's weird, right? It's a lot easier. We cascade because we can control, right? If we cascade it down 10 levels and our goals no longer have anything to do with the market, no longer have anything to do with our customers, we can just check them off the box and say, we did it, we shipped the feature, we put the rhinestones on the car, boom, we're done, good, we're done, you can't fire us, they can still fire you. It feels safer. But the thing that surprised me the most when I was researching this book is that the impact-minded product managers I spoke to were also the happiest product managers I spoke to. And I was not expecting that at all. I was expecting the commercially minded, the impact-focused product managers to be really stressed out, to be like, it's so hard, it's not fair, we have to do all this stuff outside of our control, what do we do? But they were like the chillest people I spoke to. And I was like, why are you chill? And they were like, because I'm just doing the reality, like, the success of my company is outside of my control. It is outside of my control. It's up to our customers. There are things that happen in the broader market that we can't control. And if I acknowledge that and work with that, then I'm just going to have an easier time. The unhappiest product people I talk to are the ones who are constantly angry that their company isn't product-led enough, isn't doing things the right way, isn't doing things the way that Netflix or Spotify or Google does it. The ones who are like, we're not really product-led, so I can't do anything, right? The ones who are like, I heard about a best practice and we don't do it the right way, therefore nothing I do matters. It's like, that's just a really bummer way to go through life. Like, if you're fighting against internal systems that you can't control, you're just going to be angry and you're going to be a bummer. And at some point when the CFO of your company says, who are these product people and why are we paying them? If the answer is like, I don't know, but they hate me and complain about everything all the time, it's not a great situation to find yourself in. So, in order to plant yourselves in the reality of your organization, I want to leave you with this question. This is the first question I often ask product teams. And again, I think it is that dose of grounding in the reality of our situation from which every other conversation flows. If you were the CEO of the company, would you fund this team? Would you pay for your own product team if you were responsible for the existential success of the company? And if your answer is, I don't know, then that's not a great answer. If your answer is no, then it's a really good thing you asked that question before someone else did. I've worked with 2 teams in my career that have actually disbanded themselves after having this conversation. Which is not to say they all quit the company, but one team said, look, what we're responsible for doesn't matter. We should be responsible for something else. Another team, 7 super good engineers who were kind of assembled as a special forces team, they were like, the amount of time it takes us to find projects to work on means we can't have the impact we need. Just find other teams that need better engineers and we'll go to those teams, and the individuals on this team will actually drive a lot more impact. Again, we can only pretend that this question doesn't exist for so long. People are asking this question. Our companies are figuring out whether we are a good investment. And if we can speak to that directly, if we can take ownership and direct our team to do work that matters for the business, we are in such a better position than if we wait for someone else to make that case for us. There's that QR code again. These are all the places where you can find me. That's my website. That's LinkedIn. That's my Instagram where I post fashion and guitar stuff. That's my email address. I got some copies of the book to give to anyone who asks a question. Anyone have a question? Yeah.
When you understand the situation and you know that you are not having impact, that you don't have authority to change things, what can you do?
You probably have more authority than you think. No, I know that sounds like a weird answer, but like you probably do have more authority than you think, or at the very least, you can make the folks who have authority aware of the trade-offs, right? So if you think I was just talking to someone about this yesterday. She called me and she was like, hey, I've got this, the executives want me to build these things. I don't think they're impactful. There are other things that are more impactful. And I was like, well, have you made that case to them? She was like, well, they don't. I'm like, make the case to them. Like, there might be things you don't know. You know, I worked at a company called Songza that got acquired by Google, and my boss kept giving me stuff to do that I thought was really stupid. But that's because we were about to get acquired by Google, and I didn't know that. He was like, Bill, do this stuff. And I'm like, that's stupid. I hate it. But it was because there was something I didn't know. So there might be things you don't know. Part of your job as a product person is not to like make the decision always, but to make sure that the people who do make the decision understand the trade-offs at play. So if you can go to them and say like, all right, you've told us to build these 3 things. These other things we think would have this impact. These 3 things we think would have this impact. Let's talk through this and figure out which one makes the most sense. You might not have the authority to make the decision, but at the very least, you know the people making the decision know the things they might not know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I really enjoyed your speech.
Thank you.
I'd like to know your book is about these same topics. It's something completely different to this. So
It's about this. So this book is basically, anyone who's asked a question gets a book. And the gentleman in the back gets a book too for saying nice things to me about my last book. That is a surefire way to get a copy of the new book. So I wrote this book. I actually didn't think this was the book I was going to write. I was going to write a book called Putting It Back Together about like enterprise service design. But then I realized I'm not an enterprise service designer and I don't know what I'm talking about. But when I looked back over my last couple of years of consulting work and I was like, what are the times we've actually managed to make good experiences? It was all when we knew what the impact was. Like it was these impact level conversations that were actually driving all the other stuff I wanted to talk about. So I structured the book around the questions I brought to teams. So there's not really like frameworks or best practices. It's kind of like, these are the conversations to have with your team to make sure that the work you're doing actually matters to the business. And there's a lot of examples from my work and some good. There's a great story in there from a friend of mine who worked for the National Health Service of the UK and built their COVID tracking app, which saved, I think they said, about 10,000 lives, probably, about aligning around like non-revenue targets. So I like it. I hope you like it too. Yeah.
My question is, why does this happen in large organizations?
Oh, that's a good question.
That I've been talking a lot to friends about is we're sort of very frustrated when these kind of sort of negative feedback loops happen. I don't know if you have an answer or...
I've got an answer. It's a spicy answer, but I've got an answer. We believe that business is rational, right? That companies exist to make money. I have found that most companies exist to make a couple of people, usually rich men, feel really good about themselves. And making money is a secondary KPI to that. A lot of business is about coddling the emotions of rich and powerful people. And in a lot of cases, that means that like these real world conversations about like, what do we need to achieve? How are we achieving it? Are actually not conversations that are playing out at even the highest levels of organizations. Frankly, a lot of this happens because communication about reality is stifled at the highest levels of organizations. Whether it's a startup or a corporate, like we are not really trained to live in the reality of our business. We're trained to tell people what they want to hear. We're trained to protect our territory. We're trained to kind of operate in these proxies and these little like kind of turf wars over things. But my very like abstract and weird answer to your question is that like businesses are not as rational as we think they are, And conversations about the rational impact of our business are usually secondary to political conversations about how we manage the egos of stakeholders.
I was reading, sorry to reply, but I was
Uh-huh.
reading Paul Graham
Uh-huh.
a couple of months ago. He talks about how the real objective of the company is to minimize risk. You think that seems pretty similar to what you're saying, that the real objective isn't grounded in the base.
I mean, I've been surprised at how many times in my career I've seen companies do the obviously wrong thing because somebody was like, well, this is the right thing. And everyone was like, well, he said it was the right thing, so I don't want to deal with it. So I think it's less about minimizing risk and more like, I don't know if anyone else is, I'm going to get like, I'm getting deep on this, but if anyone else has had the experience over the last couple of years of being like, everything is made up, like none of this is real, like money is not real, companies are not real, societies crumble around us, like all the systems and institutions that we thought were going to hold us up and like be resilient are way less resilient than we thought. And like a lot of the people who we trust and assume know what they're doing have no idea what they're doing. So I don't even think, I think even Paul Graham is being like a little bit overly rational in that thing. Like I think I have seen businesses incur massive risk for reasons that make no sense to me, but are personal and emotional reasons. So I think I'm starting to see businesses less as like rational entities of like business model and more as like little political fiefdoms that are really guided and determined by like the whims and personalities of their leaders. But at every level of abstraction away from that, we still have a chance to do work that actually matters. Like we have to be, like we are pushing against the currents by being rational, business-minded people in most companies. But it is ours to do, to push against those currents.
Ah, well, you go, Michaela.
I-
You can go. Sí.
Thank you. So I just wanted to share a little story that
Sure.
happened to me. A true story, like real life situation related to a company. So around 2 years ago or so, I was working on a startup. They still call themselves a startup, even though they have been more than 10 years on the market. It was an ed tech, and they teach languages. So I entered to work as I'm a product designer, so
Mhm.
obviously I entered in the product design team that was part of that product. And what happened is that I entered into a company that was a sinking, which
Mhm.
means that they were losing money.
Yep.
And when you get to see the product, obviously the product wasn't in the best shape. I mean, the product looks like it was made in the 90s, to be honest. And they were having problems with revenue. Even though they have huge and big clients, the company was having problems with revenue because the companies were not renew their licenses, the licenses they have. So the management somehow decided that they needed to cut the product.
Yep.
And me as a product designer, I could see, since I touch the product directly, and I do it in Figma, and I talk to users, and I have product managers where I talk and I talk to them my findings, and we need to build this stuff. Why is it sometimes product designers not heard when we actually know what's going on? Now, managers sometimes, at least in my perspective, they really don't know at all. It depends on how the attitude of the manager.
Yeah. So I have a couple thoughts on that. One is again like sometimes I was thinking when you were talking earlier about like the founder who just wanted the like one little downstream metric. I was like, oh, I've worked with that founder before, and sometimes it's really hard to just get them to be like, okay, but why does that matter? How does that level up? Like sometimes people like sometimes vanity metrics are just really hard to beat. But also, frankly, I've found that as a product person, I'm sometimes really not great at speaking directly to why these things matter. Like, I've seen this with myself as a product manager. I've seen this with designers, with service designers, with people who come in and are like, let's do a workshop and do some impact mapping, as opposed to like, this is the problem, here's how much money it's costing you, let's fix it now. So I think part of the reason I wrote the book and structured this the way I did is that I think we just don't have time to like like so many of the designers I've worked with who I love working with, they'll like take you in a 2-hour workshop and take you along the whole journey, and it's like, oh, this is so cool, I get it, but like that doesn't always work with executives. Sometimes you have to just come in and be like, this decision costs this much money. Here's how much money would be different if we did it this way. Do you want to continue having this conversation? And I think that sometimes I've certainly failed to approach things that way, and I've just needed to remind myself that like the things that they are accountable for and the things I'm accountable for might be different. And if I can speak their language as directly as possible, then I'm more likely to get things over the line.
Just a small comment and then for this. I just wanted to finish the story. What happened at the end?
Yeah?
They changed the C-level. I mean, they
Mhm.
changed the CEO that I had, and then the strategy and the objectives of the company changed. And what happened is the product team, which we were working on a redesign.
Mhm.
Trying to make obviously the company also was making a rebranding with us, so they made a rebranding, and we as product designers we needed to use the new branding to deliver the new visual UX and UI for the platform.
Yep.
On our journey on the redesign, we have some issues. First with operation teams, because obviously when I was going to design, perdón, vale. Then
You can tell me over pizza.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm going to stick around, so